I woke up as the rejected bride of the Ice Duke. So I bought his entire kingdom instead. Prologue. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Not coffee. Not printer ink. Not the stale air of another 12-hour shift staring at financial reports. Fresh lavender. Honey. Warm bread. And something strangely comforting that smelled like vanilla. I frowned. That wasn't right. The last thing I remembered was falling asleep at my desk while preparing a forensic audit that absolutely refused to balance. 3 countries. 8 shell companies. 4 to 7 fake invoices. My manager had wanted the report by morning. Instead, I apparently died on top of my spreadsheet. Or so I assumed. Because when I opened my eyes, I wasn't in my apartment. I was lying beneath a velvet canopy bed larger than my entire bedroom. Soft curtains of blush pink drifted gently in the breeze. Sunlight poured through tall crystal windows, scattering tiny rainbows across polished marble floors. My head felt heavy. Very heavy. I reached up. My fingers brushed against an elaborate silver crown woven with tiny moonflowers. What? Even my voice sounded different. Softer. Clearer. I sat upright. Silky blankets slid from my body. The first thing I saw wasn't my hands. It was fur. Long. Fluffy. Perfectly groomed midnight black fur. My ears twitched. Actual cat ears. My tail puffed instinctively behind me. No way. I jumped out of bed. A full-length mirror stood beside an ivory wardrobe. The cat staring back at me was breathtaking. She had long, luxurious black fur that shimmered with faint sapphire highlights whenever sunlight touched it. Large emerald eyes. Long elegant eyelashes. A fluffy tail that looked professionally conditioned. Tiny silver earrings sparkled beneath soft tufts of fur. She looked like she belonged on the cover of a fantasy fashion magazine. Oh. I whispered. I'm gorgeous. Then memories that weren't mine exploded into my head. Naira. 24 years old. Only daughter of House Nightbloom. Forced into a political marriage. Married yesterday. Rejected today. I blinked. Rejected. A loud knock echoed through the room. My lady. A nervous voice called from outside. The Duke has arrived. The Duke. Before I could answer, the enormous doors swung open. He walked inside like winter itself had learned how to breathe. Tall. Powerful. Perfect posture. A black tuxedo cat with immaculate white markings across his chest and paws. Silver eyes so cold they could freeze a river. Every servant immediately bowed. Nobody dared breathe. He stopped several feet away from me. No greeting. No smile. No warmth. My duty to the crown has been fulfilled. His deep voice carried effortlessly across the room. Our marriage will remain political. He slid a leather folder onto the nearby table. You will occupy the Eastern Manor. You will attend official functions when required. Our lives shall remain entirely separate. He looked directly into my eyes. You will not interfere with my affairs. Silence. Apparently, this was the moment the original Naira burst into tears. Begged for affection. Collapsed dramatically. Instead, I picked up the folder. Opened it. Read every page. Then looked back at him. So? I asked. Just to confirm. His eyebrow lifted. I receive my own residence. Correct. My own household staff. Yes. My own monthly allowance. Yes. My own authority over that estate. Yes. I smiled. A genuine smile. Oh. This is actually a fantastic deal. For the first time, the Ice Duke looked confused. You approve? Absolutely. I began flipping through the contract. Although, I tapped one paragraph. This allowance is embarrassingly low. His silver eyes narrowed. You negotiated. I'm an adult. I looked up. I have expenses. The Duke stared. I'll require independent accounting authority. He blinked. A larger operating budget. Silence. Permission to conduct business. Another blink. And ownership rights over any enterprises I establish. The room became impossibly quiet. Behind him, several servants looked ready to faint. The Duke spoke carefully. You are requesting commercial rights. Naturally. I smiled pleasantly. If this marriage is purely contractual, I might as well profit from it. He continued staring. Profit? Of course. I closed the folder. I don't intend to spend the rest of my life waiting for a husband who isn't interested. I'd rather become rich. One servant dropped a tray. It shattered. Nobody moved. The Duke slowly folded his arms. You do not seek my affection. No. My attention. No. My title. I already have it. Then what exactly do you want? I answered without hesitation. Financial independence. Silence. Then, very quietly, I have never met anyone like you. I've been told that before. He studied me another moment, then turned toward the door. The allowance will be doubled. He paused. You may establish businesses. Another pause. I expect quarterly reports. I grinned. Excellent. As he reached the doorway, I called after him. Oh. He stopped. What is your favorite color? He looked genuinely bewildered. Why? so I know what color to avoid when decorating my office. One of the guards choked, trying not to laugh. The Duke looked at me for several long seconds. Then, for the briefest moment, one corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile. More like he had forgotten how smiling worked. Interesting. He left. The massive doors closed behind him. The room remained silent. Every servant stared at me. Finally, a young orange tabby cautiously raised one paw. My lady. Yes. Were you trying to get yourself executed? I laughed. No. I walked toward the enormous windows overlooking the Duke's sprawling lands. Rolling green hills, flower-filled valleys, merchant roads, windmills, villages, harbors, markets, thousands of opportunities. My modern brain was already calculating. Poor logistics, fragmented trade routes, no centralized banking, primitive bookkeeping, massive inefficiencies. This kingdom wasn't poor. It was badly managed, which meant someone who understood economics could become unimaginably wealthy. I smiled at my reflection in the window. Looks like retirement just got moved up. Behind me, every servant exchanged nervous glances. None of them realized it yet. But within a year, the rejected bride everyone pitied would become the richest cat in the entire kingdom. And the Duke would slowly discover that convincing her to stay would become the hardest negotiation of his life. The Eastern Manor looked like someone had built a palace, forgotten it existed, and then let nature claim it back. Wild roses climbed over cracked stone walls. The once elegant fountain sat dry in the center of the courtyard, occupied by chirping bluebirds. The gardens had transformed into a miniature forest of pastel wildflowers, ivy, and waist-high grass. Soft pink cherry blossoms drifted lazily through the afternoon breeze. It was beautiful. Just terribly maintained. I stepped out of the carriage and slowly surveyed the property. My emerald eyes moved from the broken greenhouse to the sagging roof tiles, then to the moss-covered pathways. The accountant inside my brain immediately started calculating. Structural repairs, drainage, roof replacement, labor, inventory, revenue potential. Interesting. Behind me, the servants exchanged worried glances. The orange tabby who had introduced himself as Pip swallowed nervously. My lady. H.M. Most noble ladies cry when they first see this place. I looked at him. Why? They believe the Duke sends unwanted wives here. I turned back toward the manor. He accidentally sent me an investment. The servants blinked. I smiled. That's much more useful. The front doors groaned open. Dust floated lazily through warm beams of afternoon sunlight. Every piece of furniture wore a thick gray blanket of neglect. Curtains hung crooked, paint peeled from the walls. A grandfather clock had stopped sometime several years ago. Somewhere upstairs, water dripped rhythmically into a bucket. Drip, drip, drip. One elderly gray tabby slowly approached, leaning heavily on an old cane. My lady. He bowed respectfully. I am Steward Rowan. His fur was perfectly groomed, his uniform immaculate, his smile polite, his eyes too careful. I've spent years auditing companies. You learn something quickly. Lies always prepare their smiles. Welcome. He gestured around the manor. I'm afraid the estate has fallen into disrepair. I can see that. The previous staff lacked motivation. The maintenance budget was unfortunately. He hesitated. Limited. I nodded. I'll need the financial records. His smile froze. Excuse me. The ledgers. I held out my paw. Every expense. Every payroll record. Every purchase. Every repair request. His ears twitched. Immediately. I've always found that immediately is the fastest option. Silence. My lady. I'm not certain those documents are necessary. They are absolutely necessary. I merely wish to make your stay comfortable. I become comfortable when numbers balance. He laughed nervously. They're rather complicated. I love complicated. They're old. So am I. He blinked. You're 24. I've been 24 all day. Pip looked away to hide a smile. Steward Rowan didn't. Instead, his tail gave one tiny flick. Fear. Interesting. An hour later, 3 servants wheeled in 4 enormous leather-bound ledgers. Each one was thick enough to stop an arrow. They landed on the library table with heavy thuds. Dust exploded into the air. Pip coughed. Nobody has opened those in years. I can tell. I ran one claw across the cover. A clean line appeared through the dust. Years. Maybe longer. I opened the first ledger. Neat handwriting. Dates. Suppliers. Construction invoices. Payroll. Food purchases. Wine. Furniture. Garden maintenance. I turned another page. Then another. Then another. My smile slowly disappeared. Oh. Pip looked worried. Is something wrong? I closed the book. Very gently. Then opened it again. No. I said quietly. Something is impossible. For the next 3 hours, nobody spoke. The only sounds inside the library were pages turning, my pencil scratching notes, and the quiet ticking of the fireplace clock. Eventually, I leaned back, closed my eyes, and sighed. Remarkable. Pip swallowed. Good remarkable. No. Worse. I pushed one ledger across the table. Pip. Yes. Read this line. He squinted. Roof repairs. 12,000 crowns. Good. I flipped to another page. And this. Roof repairs. 9,500 crowns. Again. Roof repairs. 14,200 crowns. He frowned. The roof has been repaired a lot. I looked toward the ceiling. Water dripped into the bucket upstairs. Drip, drip, drip. I don't think it's ever been repaired. The room became quiet. Very quiet. I continued flipping pages. The greenhouse has apparently been rebuilt 6 times. The fountain restored 9. The guest rooms renovated 11. The gardens replanted every spring. Pip looked outside through the dusty windows. The fountain was still empty. The greenhouse had vines growing through broken glass. The gardens looked like a fairy tale had exploded. But exactly. I folded my paws. Either this estate employs the worst builders in history, or someone has been stealing money for years. Steward Rowan, standing near the doorway, suddenly cleared his throat. My lady. Yes. Large estates often experience accounting irregularities. I smiled politely. No. They experience theft. His smile tightened. I assure you. I also noticed something else. I slid another ledger toward him. You've been paying wages. Yes. To 63 gardeners. Correct. I looked out the window again. A single elderly rabbit was trimming one hedge. Where are they? Silence. The gardeners. I looked back at him. I'd love to meet all 63. Nobody moved. The room suddenly felt colder. Steward Rowan's calm expression cracked for less than a second. Barely noticeable. Unless you spent your career watching guilty people realize they'd been caught. Interesting. Very interesting. That evening, I stood alone on the second-floor balcony. The kingdom stretched endlessly beneath a pastel sunset. Golden fields. Tiny villages. Merchant caravans winding along distant roads. The Duke's lands were enormous. Bigger than some countries. Yet somehow, the estate was constantly short of money. That wasn't incompetence. That was organized corruption. Someone had been quietly draining wealth for years. And judging by today's conversation, they had no idea the Duke's unwanted bride knew how to find it. I smiled. They should have been afraid. Because I hadn't even started auditing yet. Tomorrow, I was going hunting. Not for criminals. For numbers. Because numbers never lied. People did. And someone in this manor had just become my first investigation. By sunrise, the eastern manor was already awake. Soft golden light spilled across the pastel gardens, making every flower sparkle with dew. Birds sang from blossoming cherry trees. The fountain was still empty. The roof still leaked. And somewhere inside the kitchen, someone had burned breakfast. I smiled. Nothing exposed corruption faster than asking simple questions. Pip hurried into the dining room carrying a tray. Fresh bread, berry jam, warm honey tea. He carefully placed everything in front of me. My lady. Yes. The steward says the gardeners have all been reassigned. Wonderful. I buttered a slice of bread. Where? He didn't say. How convenient. Pip scratched behind one eye. I don't think he likes your questions. I don't ask difficult questions. I took a sip of tea. I ask expensive ones. Half an hour later, every servant in the manor stood assembled in the courtyard. Housekeepers, guards, kitchen staff, stable workers, laundry attendants. 32 cats altogether. Everyone looked nervous. Steward Rowan stood near the front with the same carefully practiced smile. My lady. He bowed. As requested, the household has assembled. I looked around. So this is everyone? Yes. I glanced at Pip. How many employees are listed in the payroll ledger? He opened the notebook I had asked him to carry. 9 to 6. I looked back at the crowd. I count 32. Silence. The servants slowly exchanged uneasy looks. Rowan answered smoothly. The remaining employees work off-site. Oh. Seasonal duties. Where? The forests. Doing what? Forestry. I nodded thoughtfully. Excellent. His ears relaxed slightly. I'd love to visit them. His ears immediately flattened again. We never made it to the forest. Because someone else arrived first. A line of black carriages rolled through the manor gates. Silver crests decorated every door. Uniformed guards stepped aside. One carriage stopped directly in front of the manor entrance. The door opened. Out stepped a beautiful cream Persian cat. Every strand of her perfectly brushed fur shimmered like fresh snow. She wore an elegant lavender gown embroidered with tiny pearls. Her smile looked sweet. Her eyes didn't. Behind her walked 3 noble ladies, each dressed in expensive pastel silks. Pip leaned closer. That's Lady Maribel. The Duke's friend. He hesitated. Many believe she'll become his wife someday. Interesting. Maribel's gaze landed on me. It lingered. Assessing. Judging. Then she smiled. My Lady Naira. Her voice was syrup. So lovely to finally meet you. I'm sure. She looked around the neglected manor. What an unfortunate residence. I like it. Oh. It has excellent potential. She laughed softly. You really are different. I've heard. One of her companions whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. The poor thing must still think she'll win the Duke's heart. Another covered her mouth to hide a giggle. Maribel sighed dramatically. The Duke is a difficult male. I noticed. You shouldn't burden yourself with false hope. I don't. She blinked. Excuse me. I don't want his affection. Now all three noble ladies looked confused. Maribel smiled again. Every wife says that at first. I mean it. She stepped closer. The Duke has always preferred capable company. I agree. He values intelligence. So do I. He dislikes clinging females. I can't imagine anything more exhausting. Her smile faltered. This wasn't going the way she'd rehearsed. She tried again. I simply wish to prepare you. For what? For disappointment. I looked genuinely puzzled. Why would I be disappointed? The Duke spends very little time here. Oh. I shrugged. That gives me more time to work. Silence. Maribel stared. One of her companions frowned. You're not jealous. Should I be? The Duke escorted Lady Maribel through the spring festival last year. That sounds pleasant. He gave her moon lilies. How thoughtful. He personally saved her from bandits. Excellent work. The three noble cats looked completely lost. Finally, Maribel asked the question she'd been trying to reach all along. Do you love him? I thought about it, honestly, then answered. I've spoken to him for approximately 7 minutes. Yes. I don't even know his favorite dessert. Nobody said anything. I smiled politely. I think marriage should involve slightly more data. Maribel recovered surprisingly quickly. I suppose you'll understand eventually. Perhaps. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh. She looked back. The Duke is inspecting merchant caravans today. Good. He often stops by the western vineyards afterward. Wonderful. He usually has dinner alone. That sounds peaceful. You're really not going after him? I laughed. No. I'm going after whoever stole half this estate. The courtyard fell completely silent. Maribel blinked. Stole. I looked toward Steward Rowan. Oh. You haven't heard. His face had gone noticeably paler. I discovered several years of missing funds yesterday. Now every servant was staring at Rowan. His smile finally disappeared. Just for a second. Then returned. My lady misunderstands the records. I hope so. I smiled warmly. Because tomorrow. I held up one thick ledger. I'm beginning a complete audit. Several servants quietly gasped. Maribel looked between me and Rowan. Something changed in her expression. Curiosity. She'd arrived expecting to meet a lonely rejected bride. Instead, she'd walked into the beginning of a financial investigation. That night, the manor slept. Almost. I couldn't. Not after what I'd found. I spread every ledger across the library floor. Payroll. Construction. Trade. Taxes. Food. Wine. Repairs. The numbers formed patterns. Beautiful. Predictable. And impossible. I traced one supplier's name with my claw. Silver Oak Construction. Paid 4 to 7 times. I checked another ledger. Different department. Same supplier. Another. Same name. Again. 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 Got you. There wasn't just theft. There was an entire network. Someone had invented fake companies. Submitted fake invoices. Collected real money. 4 years. Footsteps echoed outside the library. I quietly blew out the candles. The room fell into darkness. The door creaked open. A shadow slipped inside. Not a servant. Not Pip. The figure moved directly toward the accounting ledgers, as though they already knew exactly where they were. My heart slowed. Not from fear. From excitement. The trap had worked. Someone had come to destroy the evidence. And they had no idea. The rejected bride was still awake. The library remained completely still. Moonlight spilled through the tall windows, painting silver squares across the polished wooden floor. I stood behind one of the towering bookshelves, barely breathing. The mysterious figure closed the door without making a sound. Professional. Not a curious servant. Not a thief looking for valuables. Whoever this was, they had come for one thing. The ledgers. The cloaked cat moved directly toward the large oak table where I had intentionally left every accounting book neatly stacked. Too neatly. It was bait. The figure hesitated for only a heartbeat before pulling a small glass bottle from beneath the cloak. Oil. My ears twitched. Not theft. Arson. They intended to destroy years of financial records. Interesting. Very interesting. The cat uncorked the bottle and poured oil across the top ledger, then reached for a flint striker. I stepped out from behind the bookshelf. I wouldn't do that. The figure froze. Slowly. Very slowly. They turned. A dark hood concealed their face. Only two bright amber eyes reflected the moonlight. You've made a mistake. I folded my paws calmly behind my back. No. I made a copy. Silence. Their eyes flicked toward the ledgers, then back to me. You expected me. I was hoping someone would save me the trouble of finding them. The cloaked cat didn't speak. Instead, they lunged. Not toward me. Toward the table. Fast. Far faster than I expected. The flint sparked. A tiny flame leapt onto the oil-soaked pages. Whoosh. Fire exploded across the top ledger. Oh, that's rude. Without thinking, I grabbed the heavy wool tablecloth and threw it over the flames. The fire disappeared beneath thick fabric. Smoke curled toward the ceiling. The stranger used the distraction perfectly. They sprinted toward the window. Oh, no you don't. I chased after them. The cloaked cat vaulted cleanly over the windowsill. I followed. My paws landed surprisingly gracefully on the garden path below. Apparently this body was much more athletic than mine had ever been. The intruder raced through the moonlit gardens. Cherry blossom petals swirled behind them like pink snow. They cleared the dry fountain in one elegant leap. I wasn't gaining, but I wasn't falling behind either. The chase burst into the neglected hedge maze. Branches whipped past my face. The moon disappeared beneath thick vines. Every turn looked identical. Left, right, straight, dead end. No, not a dead end. A hidden gate. The stranger slipped through. I reached it 2 seconds later. Locked. I frowned. Clever. A soft laugh echoed from the other side. Then, silence. Gone. When I finally returned to the library, Pip was waiting outside with 3 terrified servants. My lady. He nearly tackled me. We saw smoke. I'm fine. You chased the criminal. I tried. Did you catch them? No. But they accidentally answered 3 important questions. Pip blinked. They did? I smiled. They knew exactly where the ledgers were. They came prepared. They wanted evidence destroyed, not money stolen. And I carefully lifted the edge of the scorched tablecloth. The real ledgers weren't here. Pip looked confused. They weren't. I pointed toward the fireplace. He frowned. The fireplace. Behind it. His mouth slowly fell open. You hid them. I moved them after dinner. He stared at me. So, those books on the table were bookkeeping manuals from 20 years ago. His eyes became enormous. They burned the wrong books. They certainly tried. For the first time since arriving in this strange kingdom, I felt genuinely excited. Someone important was frightened, which meant I was getting closer. The following morning, news of the attempted fire spread through the manor before breakfast. Servants whispered in every hallway. Kitchen staff spoke in hushed voices. Guards suddenly stood much straighter whenever I walked past. Apparently, the rejected bride had chased an intruder across the estate by herself. I hadn't intended to become intimidating, but I wasn't complaining. Just after sunrise, a carriage rolled through the front gates. Unlike yesterday's elegant noble carriage, this one carried the Duke's silver crest. Pip nearly dropped his tea tray. The Duke? What about him? He's he. So, he never comes here twice in 1 week. Interesting. Moments later, the front doors opened. Duke Orion Ashclaw walked inside. His black military coat contrasted beautifully against the soft pastel walls of the manor. He looked exactly as composed as before, until his eyes landed on the scotch marks near the library door. His expression changed instantly. What happened? Straight to the point. No greeting. Were you injured? That's almost concern. His silver eyes narrowed. I asked a question. I chased someone. His gaze sharpened. Explain. So I did. The ledgers. The fire. The chase. The hidden gate. The escape. He listened without interrupting once. When I finished, the room fell quiet. Finally, he spoke. You should have called the guards. They were asleep. You could have been killed. I wasn't. That is not the point. I folded my arms. Then what is? He looked directly into my eyes. The point. His voice became unexpectedly quiet. Is that my wife should never have to chase criminals alone. The words hung in the air. My wife. Not Lady Nyra. Not the Duchess. Not the political bride. My wife. For reasons I couldn't explain. My heartbeat stumbled. I quickly cleared my throat. Well, I'm alive. Yes. His jaw tightened. And whoever entered this manor, his expression hardened into ice, will regret it. For the first time, I realized something important. The Duke wasn't angry because someone had tampered with his estate. He was angry because someone had tried to hurt me. And judging by the dangerous look in his silver eyes, whoever had entered my library last night had just made a very powerful enemy. The Eastern Manor had never been so quiet. Not because everyone had gone to sleep, because everyone knew the Duke was angry. Very angry. Servants hurried through the corridors without speaking. Kitchen staff avoided making eye contact. Even the birds seemed quieter. Only the fountain remained unchanged. Still dry. Still forgotten. I stood beside it with my morning tea. Someone really should fix this. It can be repaired today. I nearly spilled my tea. The Duke had appeared beside me so silently that I hadn't heard a single footstep. You walk like a ghost. I was trained to. I believe it. He glanced toward the empty fountain. I'll have it repaired. Don't. He looked at me. I have a better idea. An hour later, every contractor employed by the estate stood in the courtyard. Stonemasons, carpenters, plumbers, gardeners, painters, more than 40 cats. Interesting. Yesterday, Steward Rowan claimed there were 63 gardeners. Today, only 6 had appeared. I quietly counted them again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Definitely not 63. The Duke stood beside me, arms folded. You requested repairs. I requested information. The contractors bowed respectfully. Steward Rowan stepped forward. My lord. My lady. The repair teams are assembled. The Duke nodded once. Proceed. Rowan smiled. Excellent. I raised one paw. Actually. Everyone looked at me. I have a small question. Rowan's smile faded slightly. Of course. I pointed toward the 6 gardeners. The payroll lists 63. He answered immediately. The others remain assigned elsewhere. Wonderful. I smiled pleasantly. Bring them. Silence. Their current assignment makes that difficult. I'll wait. They're traveling. Where? Various estates. Names. Several. Which ones? His mouth opened. Nothing came out. The Duke slowly turned toward him. Answer. Rowan visibly swallowed. My lord. The lady's questions are highly specific. They require research. I looked at Orion. He doesn't know. I know. Rowan's ears flattened. My lord, surely this discussion can wait. It cannot. The Duke's voice had become dangerously calm. Produce every employee on the payroll. Before sunset. Or explain why they do not exist. Rowan bowed deeply. As you command. He hurried away much faster than dignity normally allowed. Pip quietly stepped beside me. He's panicking. I noticed. The Duke looked at me. You suspected this. I suspected theft. You never mentioned ghost employees. I only confirmed them yesterday. He studied me carefully. You sold in 2 days. What my auditors failed to notice in 8 years. I shrugged. They were looking for missing money. And you. I looked for impossible people. For just a moment, the corner of his mouth twitched again. Not quite a smile, but definitely trying. The inspection continued. We toured the greenhouse. Broken glass. Dead irrigation pipes. Collapsed planting beds. According to the ledger, it had been fully restored 3 months ago. Interesting. Next, the stables. Half the horse stall sat empty, yet feed expenses had doubled. Then, the wine cellar. Hundreds of bottles, most covered in dust. The inventory claimed thousands. Finally, the warehouse. Large, cold, perfectly organized. Almost too organized. Something felt wrong. I walked slowly between towering shelves, barrels, crates, boxes. Everything looked ordinary. Until I noticed the floor. I knelt, ran one claw across the wooden boards. Fresh scratches. Very fresh. Someone had recently moved something heavy. I tapped the floor twice. Thunk, thunk, thunk. Then, one section sounded different. Hello. I smiled. There you are. The warehouse manager looked nervous. My lady. Move these crates. He hesitated. The Duke's grain reserves are stored here. Move them. He looked toward Rowan. Rowan quickly answered. That isn't necessary. I stood. Oh. Now it's absolutely necessary. It took 6 workers nearly 10 minutes. One by one, the heavy crates were rolled aside. Beneath them, a large wooden trapdoor appeared. The courtyard fell silent. The warehouse manager turned pale. Steward Rowan closed his eyes. Just briefly. The Duke spoke first. Open it. Nobody moved. I gave an order. 2 guards stepped forward. The heavy iron ring groaned as they pulled. The trapdoor slowly lifted. Cold air drifted upward. A staircase disappeared into darkness. Torches were lit. The Duke descended first. I followed. Then Pip. Then the guards. At the bottom, the tunnel opened into a hidden underground storeroom. My eyes widened. Shelf after shelf. Room after room. Filled to the ceiling. Silk. Wine. Imported spices. Rare timber. Furniture. Jewelry. Tools. Medicine. Enough supplies to rebuild half the estate. The Duke stared silently. I slowly turned toward Rowan. Interesting. His shoulders sagged. My lord. It isn't what it appears. I laughed. It almost never is. The Duke picked up a ledger resting on one shelf. His silver eyes scanned the pages, then darkened. These goods. He looked up. Were reported stolen 5 years ago. Nobody spoke. He opened another ledger. Then another. Every page told the same story. Declared lost. Declared damaged. Declared destroyed. Actually, hidden. The Duke slowly closed the final book. His expression became terrifyingly calm. Rowan. The elderly steward lowered his head. Yes, my lord. You have exactly one opportunity. The silence became unbearable. Tell me. The Duke's voice echoed through the underground chamber. Who else is involved? Rowan slowly raised his eyes. He looked directly at me. Then, he smiled. Not the polite smile he'd worn for days. A different smile. Cold. Satisfied. You really don't know. My ears twitched. He chuckled softly. I always wondered how long it would take before someone clever arrived. The guards tightened their grip on their swords. Rowan looked straight at the Duke. My lord. I wasn't stealing from you. The Duke's eyes narrowed. Then who? Rowan's smile widened. I was collecting. For the crown. The entire underground chamber fell silent. Even the torches seemed to stop crackling. I looked at Orion. He looked back at me. Neither of us spoke, because we had both realized the same terrifying thing. This wasn't simple corruption anymore. If Rowan was telling the truth, someone inside the royal palace had been quietly draining the Duke's fortune for years, and exposing the conspiracy could become an act of treason. The underground storeroom fell into complete silence. Nobody moved. Nobody even seemed willing to breathe. The only sound came from the distant drip of water somewhere deep beneath the manor. I watched Steward Rowan carefully. His posture had changed. Gone was the timid old steward who stumbled over explanations. Standing before us now was someone confident, someone who believed he was protected. That alone made him dangerous. The Duke's silver eyes remained fixed on him. Repeat what you just said. Rowan folded his paws behind his back. I wasn't stealing from you. His voice was steady. I was collecting. For the crown. One of the guards immediately stepped forward. Liar. The Duke lifted one paw. The guard froze. Orion never took his eyes off Rowan. You expect me to believe the royal treasury ordered my estate to be robbed? I expect nothing. Rowan smiled faintly. I simply know the truth. I slowly walked around the hidden storeroom. Every shelf was perfectly organized. Every crate numbered. Every barrel sealed. Whoever managed this operation wasn't reckless. They were meticulous. I stopped beside one stack of wooden chests. Each bore the Duke's family crest. But beneath it, another symbol had been burned into the wood. A tiny silver crown. Interesting. Very interesting. I crouched beside the chest. When was this added? Rowan glanced toward me. I wondered how long it would take before you noticed. I brushed my claws across the branding. It was done after the crate was manufactured. Correct. So these weren't stolen by bandits? No. They were intercepted. Yes. Before reaching the manor. His smile widened. Excellent. The Duke looked between us. You understand this? I think I understand enough. I stood. The theft began long before these supplies ever reached your estate. Orion frowned. Explain. I pointed toward the branded crate. If thieves had attacked a shipment, they wouldn't stop to carefully organize inventory. They'd take everything. They certainly wouldn't create accurate ledgers. I lifted one of the books. Someone wanted these goods to disappear. Without anyone asking questions. Pip slowly blinked. So, they stole them before they officially arrived. Exactly. The Duke remained silent for several moments. Then he asked the question that mattered. Who authorized this? Rowan laughed. You still don't understand. His calmness unsettled everyone. My lord. You've spent years believing this estate belonged entirely to you. He slowly gestured around the underground warehouse. It never did. The guard stiffened. The crown owns every grain of wheat. Every stone. Every soldier. Every road. And every duke. The air suddenly felt colder. The royal palace simply decided. You had more wealth than necessary. My ears flattened. That wasn't taxation. That was extortion. Orion stepped closer. His towering frame cast a long shadow across the underground floor. You forged records. No. You hid shipments. Yes. You diverted payroll. Yes. You fabricated construction contracts. Yes. And you expect me to overlook all of that because someone above you gave permission. Rowan's smile disappeared. No. I expect you to realize that arresting me won't solve your problem. Silence. There are dozens like me. Another pause. Across every noble estate. The room suddenly felt much smaller. Dozens. Not one corrupt steward. An entire network. My brain was already working. Too many moving parts. Too organized. Too consistent. This wasn't ordinary corruption. It functioned like a corporation. A criminal corporation. Someone at the top established fake suppliers. Middle managers approved invoices. Estate officials redirected deliveries. Payroll officers invented workers. Transport companies falsified shipping records. Money flowed upward. Every participant took a small share. Exactly like an embezzlement scheme. Except, on a national scale. I quietly exhaled. Whoever built this network was frighteningly intelligent. The Duke noticed my expression. What are you thinking? I answered honestly. I'm thinking this is too efficient. His eyebrow lifted. What do you mean? Greedy people are usually careless. I looked around the warehouse. This operation isn't. They've survived years. No loose ends. No obvious mistakes. No missing paperwork. Everything balances. Rowan actually chuckled. You truly are remarkable. I ignored him. They didn't expect to be discovered. Because nobody was supposed to know how to read the numbers. The Duke looked at me. You saw patterns. I saw habits. Just then, a young guard hurried down the stairs. My lord. Everyone turned. The guard was breathing heavily. What happened? A royal messenger has arrived. My ears twitched. Already? The guard nodded. He insists on delivering an urgent decree. My stomach tightened. Too fast. Far too fast. We hadn't even left the warehouse. Nobody outside this room should have known what we'd discovered. Unless someone had already reported us. Minutes later, we gathered in the manor's grand hall. A white Siamese cat wearing the royal crest stood waiting. Elegant. Perfect posture. Expressionless. He bowed. My lord. My lady. I bring greetings from His Majesty. The Duke nodded. The decree. The messenger produced a scroll wrapped in crimson silk. It concerns your eastern estate. Every servant looked confused. Mine too. The messenger broke the royal seal. Then began reading. By order of the crown. A royal audit commission shall arrive within 3 days. To inspect the finances of the eastern manor. My heart skipped. 3 days. Convenient timing. The messenger continued. All financial records must remain untouched until the commission completes its investigation. I looked at Orion. He looked at me. Neither of us spoke. Because we both understood. Someone wasn't coming to investigate. They were coming to erase every trace of the conspiracy before we could expose it. And this time, they would arrive with the king's authority. The royal messenger left as quietly as he had arrived. No farewell. No explanation. Just a crisp bow before disappearing through the manor gates. The enormous hall remained silent long after the carriage had vanished. Every servant looked toward the Duke. Nobody dared speak first. Finally, Pip whispered. That can't be a coincidence. No. I folded the decree and placed it carefully on the table. It isn't. The Duke stared at the royal seal. They moved too quickly. Exactly. He looked at me. You reached the same conclusion. I did. The palace shouldn't know about the hidden warehouse. Unless someone informed them. We both turned toward Steward Rowan. The elderly grey tabby was now bound between 2 guards. His expression remained surprisingly calm. You've already lost. He sounded almost amused. The commission will arrive. The evidence will disappear. And you'll spend the rest of your lives explaining why you questioned the crown. I walked over until we were standing nose to nose. You smile too much. He blinked. Excuse me. Confident criminals always smile. They think they know the ending. I leaned closer. I enjoyed changing endings. For the first time, his smile weakened. Only slightly. But it weakened. That afternoon, the Duke converted the manor library into a temporary headquarters. Maps covered one wall. Financial ledgers filled another. Boxes of recovered documents lined every shelf. Servants hurried in and out carrying reports. Pip proudly pinned colored ribbons across a giant map of the estate. It looks important. It is. What does it mean? Nothing yet. Oh. I simply think better with colors. Sable, the captain of the estate guards, entered carrying several rolled maps. She was a graceful Russian blue cat with short silver blue fur and bright sapphire eyes. Unlike most officers I'd met, she didn't waste words. My lord. My lady. She unrolled the first map. This marks every warehouse owned by the estate. A second. Every trade route. A third. Every checkpoint. I smiled. I like you already. She tilted 1A. Because I'm organized. Exactly. The Duke quietly watched the exchange. You recruited my captain in less than 5 minutes. I recruited competence. Sable almost smiled. Almost. 4 hours. We examined shipment records, delivery schedules, payroll, tax receipts, trade permits. The more we uncovered, the stranger everything became. Nothing was random. Missing grain always disappeared before winter. Wine shipments vanished before festivals. Building supplies disappeared just before repair season. Someone wasn't stealing carelessly. They understood economics. I circled several dates with charcoal. See this? The Duke stepped beside me. What am I looking at? Timing. I pointed across 3 separate ledgers. Construction materials. Medicine. Food. They all disappeared during periods of highest demand. So the shortages increase prices. Exactly. And who benefits? I looked toward the hidden warehouse beneath the manor. Whoever controls the stolen inventory. Pip's eyes became enormous. They steal. Then sell everything back. I nodded. At double the price. Sable quietly muttered. That's brilliant. It's evil. But brilliant. Late that evening, a knock echoed through the library. One of the youngest servants hurried inside. My lady. There's someone asking for you. Who? He wouldn't give his name. The Duke immediately stood. Where is he? The front gate. I'll come. The stranger stood beneath the flowering archway outside the estate. He wore simple travel clothes. Brown cloak. Worn boots. A faded hat pulled low over his face. Completely ordinary. Too ordinary. As we approached, he removed the hat. A young silver tabby. No older than 20. He looked exhausted. Terrified. He bowed so quickly he nearly fell over. My lady. I heard. His voice trembled. I heard you're investigating the estate. I exchanged a glance with Orion. We are. The young tabby swallowed hard. My father. Worked here. Worked. He disappeared. My ears twitched. When? 5 years ago. Officially. They said bandits killed him. He lowered his eyes. But. He wrote me a letter before he vanished. My heartbeat quickened. What letter? The young cat slowly reached inside his cloak. He removed a small leather journal. Old. Weathered. Wrapped carefully in cloth. My father was one of the accountants. Every guard immediately became alert. The Duke stepped forward. Where did you find this? He mailed it to me. I've hidden it ever since. Why now? The young tabby's eyes filled with tears. Because. Everyone who knew the truth keeps dying. The manor library became silent once again. The journal rested in the center of the table. Nobody touched it. Finally, I carefully opened the first page. Neat handwriting filled every line. Daily accounting notes. Shipment numbers. Names. Dates. Everything perfectly organized. Then, about halfway through, the handwriting changed. It became rushed, uneven, fearful. I began reading aloud. If anyone finds this, do not trust the commission. They aren't auditors. They're cleaners. Whenever an estate discovers the truth, the commission arrives first. The witnesses disappear second. The room fell deathly quiet. I turned another page. There was only one sentence, written so deeply the ink had nearly pierced the paper. The true leader isn't in the palace. He's closer than everyone believes. I slowly closed the journal. No one spoke. Not Pip. Not Sable. Not even the Duke. Because one terrible realization settled over all of us. We had been looking toward the capital, when perhaps the mastermind had been standing much closer all along. And if the journal was right, the greatest danger wasn't 3 days away. It was already inside the Duke's circle. The journal remained open on the library table. No one spoke. The crackling fireplace suddenly sounded much louder than before. Pip finally broke the silence. If the leader isn't in the palace, then where is he? I slowly closed the journal. That's the wrong question. Everyone looked at me. The better question is, who benefits the most? I walked toward the giant map covering the wall. Every shipment, every missing caravan, every fake construction contract, every phantom employee, every stolen supply. I pinned another ribbon across the center. Then another. Then another. Soon the ribbons all crossed in one location. Not the royal palace. Not the Eastern Manor. A trading city. Brightport. The largest commercial city in the kingdom. Sable frowned. Everything passes through Brightport. Exactly. The roads. The rivers. The merchant guilds. The warehouses. The banks. If someone wanted to secretly control trade, I tapped the city. They'd start here. The Duke studied the map. You believe the mastermind is a merchant. I believe someone is using merchants. There's a difference. Pip scratched one A. I don't understand. I smiled. If you're stealing thousands of barrels of grain, where do you hide them? In warehouses. Who owns warehouses? Merchants. If you're moving luxury furniture, who transports it? Merchants. If you're laundering money, who keeps financial records? Pip's eyes widened. Merchants. I nodded. Exactly. Sable crossed her arms. We can send soldiers. No. Everyone looked at me. Why not? Because soldiers announce themselves. I smiled. I'd rather arrive as a customer. The Duke looked unconvinced. You intend to investigate personally? I do. It's dangerous. So is waiting. The Royal Commission arrives in 2 days. I know. Then we cannot leave the estate. I smiled. We can. He frowned. Explain. I picked up one of the trade permits recovered from the hidden warehouse. This estate owns several merchant companies. It does. They've simply never been used. The Duke nodded slowly. Continue. We won't travel as nobles. We'll travel as merchants. Pip gasped. I get to wear normal clothes. You get to carry boxes. Oh. The next morning, the transformation began. Gone were silk gowns. Gone were jeweled necklaces. Gone was the silver crown. Instead, I wore a simple cream traveling dress beneath a dark green cloak, comfortable boots, a leather satchel. My long black fur was braided neatly beneath a plain ribbon. Looking in the mirror, I barely resembled a duchess. I looked like an ambitious young merchant. Perfect. Pip emerged from another room. He proudly spun in a cycle. How do I look? I blinked. He was wearing an enormous floppy hat. It completely covered his eyes. Can you see? No. Take it off. Oh. Sable appeared next. Simple traveling clothes. Twin daggers hidden beneath her cloak. Practical. Efficient. Exactly what I'd expected. Then, the Duke walked into the room. Every servant stopped moving. Even dressed as a merchant. He somehow looked impossibly noble. Dark trousers. Simple white shirt. Long charcoal coat. No family crest. No ceremonial sword. Just a plain travel blade at his hip. He looked less like a duke, and more like someone every merchant instinctively wanted to impress. I sighed. You're still too handsome. The room became silent. The Duke blinked. What? I covered my mouth. Did I say that out loud? Pip immediately looked away. Sable suddenly became fascinated by the ceiling. The Duke actually looked embarrassed. I merely meant. I quickly recovered. You don't look poor enough. He looked at his clothes. These are ordinary. For you. He sighed. I cannot become uglier. I laughed. I appreciate your honesty. For the first time, a genuine smile appeared on his face. Small, brief, but unmistakably real. Every servant froze. Pip whispered. He smiled. Sable quietly answered. I didn't think he could. The Duke immediately cleared his throat. We're wasting daylight. By noon, our wagon rolled through the countryside. Rolling pastel hills stretched endlessly beneath brilliant blue skies. Lavender fields danced in the breeze. Cherry trees lined the roads. Butterflies drifted lazily among colorful wildflowers. It looked like a painting. Peaceful. Perfect. Almost enough to make someone forget there was a kingdom-sized conspiracy hiding beneath all this beauty. As Brightport came into view, my breath caught. It was magnificent. Hundreds of colorful buildings climbed gentle hills overlooking a sparkling harbor. Pastel banners fluttered between rooftops. Ships crowded the docks. Merchant wagons lined every street. Cats from every corner of the kingdom bustled through the markets. Music drifted through the air. Fresh bread, roasted chestnuts, flowers, perfume. The city practically glowed with life. Pip's mouth fell open. I've never seen so many cats. Neither had I. We rolled through the eastern gate. Immediately, something caught my attention. Every merchant entering the city stopped at a customs office. Each paid a fee, received a stamped token, then continued inside. Simple. Efficient. Except, one wagon didn't stop. It rolled straight through. No inspection. No payment. Nothing. I frowned. Did you see that? The Duke nodded. The guards ignored them. Sable quietly observed. They knew the driver. I watched the wagon disappear into the crowd. Painted on its side, a silver falcon. The same symbol I'd seen hidden inside several accounting ledgers. There it was again. Not a coincidence. A signature. I smiled. We found our first lead. Before we could follow, a cheerful voice called from across the market. Fresh honey cakes. Sweet berry tarts. Apple pastries. Pip immediately stopped walking. I'll be right back. You absolutely will not. Please. No. I can smell cinnamon. So can I. It smells amazing. It does. We both stood there silently for a moment. The Duke looked between us. You're both thinking about pastries. Yes. This investigation can survive 5 minutes. I smiled brightly. I knew there was a reason I married you. The words escaped before I could stop them. Silence. Complete silence. The Duke stared at me. My ears burned beneath my fur. I meant. Strategically. Pip buried his face in his paws to hide his laughter. Even Sable looked like she was struggling not to smile. The Duke quietly shook his head. Let's buy the pastries. As we walked toward the bakery, none of us noticed the elegant white cat watching from the balcony of a nearby merchant guild. He calmly closed a ledger, smiled to himself, and whispered, So, the Duchess has finally arrived. Then he rang a small silver bell. Somewhere deep inside Brightport, the hunt for us had just begun. The smell of warm cinnamon filled the marketplace. Fresh pastries cooled on wooden racks outside a tiny bakery painted in soft mint green. Pip was already staring through the window like he'd found paradise. I've waited my whole life for this moment. You've been here before. I've waited my whole morning. That's more believable. The elderly calico baker laughed warmly. You four look like you've traveled a long way. We have, I replied with a smile. Then your first honey cake is on the house. Pip nearly cried. I love this city. 5 minutes later, we sat beneath a flowering magnolia tree overlooking the bustling market square. The pastries were incredible. Warm, light, filled with wildflower honey and whipped berry cream. I took another bite. Okay. Pip grinned. I knew you'd understand. I'd ordered this bakery just to learn the recipe. The baker laughed from inside the shop. I'll pretend I didn't hear that. Even Orion looked noticeably more relaxed. Watching him enjoy something as simple as a pastry felt strangely satisfying. He noticed me looking. What? Nothing. You smiled. I did not. You smiled at the pastry. I approved of its craftsmanship. Pip whispered to Sable. He's flirting. I'm discussing baked goods. No, Pip whispered. You're discussing baked goods romantically. Orion sighed. I regret bringing both of you. Once breakfast was finished, we returned to the investigation. The silver falcon wagon had disappeared. Fortunately, merchants love talking, especially when they believed you might become a customer. Within an hour, I'd learned more than I expected. The Silver Falcon Trading Company owned warehouses across Brightport. They rarely negotiated prices. They always paid in cash. And somehow, they never lost shipments. Odd. Very odd. We entered the merchant exchange hall. It was magnificent. A massive circular building beneath a glass dome painted in soft blues and golds. Elegant balconies overlooked the trading floor. Dozens of merchants argued politely over contracts. Ink stained every desk. Accountants rushed between offices carrying stacks of ledgers. My idea of paradise. Pip looked horrified. It's all paperwork. It's beautiful. It looks stressful. It looks profitable. A cheerful receptionist greeted us. Welcome. May I assist you? I'm looking for warehouse leases. She smiled professionally. For which district? Any owned by Silver Falcon Trading. Her smile disappeared. Only for a second. I'm afraid those records aren't available. Why? Private contracts. I'd like to rent neighboring storage. Those districts are fully occupied. Every warehouse. Yes. Interesting. Too quick. Too rehearsed. I thanked her anyway. As we walked away, I whispered to Orion. She's lying. I know. We wandered through the trading floor pretending to compare prices. In reality, I was watching everyone. One clock kept checking the entrance. Another repeatedly glanced toward an upstairs balcony. Messengers arrived. Whispered. Left. Nobody seemed relaxed. Then, a bell rang. Every conversation stopped. The entire hall fell silent. From the second floor, a white long-haired cat slowly descended the grand staircase. Perfectly groomed. Immaculate ivory suit. Golden cufflinks. Calm amber eyes. Every merchant bowed. Not out of respect. Out of fear. Interesting. Very interesting. The receptionist immediately straightened. Guildmaster Lucien. He acknowledged everyone with a pleasant smile. Warm. Polished. Practiced. His eyes scanned the hall. Until they found us. For the briefest moment. His smile faltered. Just slightly. Then it returned. He approached gracefully. New merchants. His voice was smooth as silk. I smiled. We're hoping to expand our business. Wonderful. Our city welcomes ambition. I've heard. His gaze lingered on Orion. You seem familiar. We've traveled. I'm sure. His attention shifted back to me. And you. Naira. A lovely name. He gently kissed the back of my paw. Brightport is fortunate to receive such distinguished visitors. Polite. Too polite. Everything about him felt measured. Calculated. Like every word had been rehearsed. Lucien gestured toward a private lounge overlooking the trading floor. May I offer refreshments? Of course. Minutes later, elegant tea was served. Fresh fruit, tiny pastries, expensive porcelain. Lucien smiled pleasantly. What brings you to Brightport? I answered honestly. Business. What sort? I'm looking for investment opportunities. Excellent. We specialize in partnerships. I've noticed. His eyes sparkled. You've done research. A little. He folded his paws neatly. Then perhaps you've heard that Silver Falcon Trading is expanding. There it is. He blinked. I'm sorry. The company. I've heard the name several times today. His smile never changed. They're excellent merchants. I'm sure. You seem interested. I like successful businesses. So do I. Silence. Neither of us looked away. It felt less like conversation, and more like chess. Finally, Lucien spoke again. Forgive my curiosity. But your husband? He nodded politely toward Orion. Doesn't speak much. I smiled. He says words for important occasions. A wise habit. Lucien looked at Orion. And what business do you manage? Without hesitation, Orion answered. Security. Not a lie. Just. Incomplete. Lucien nodded thoughtfully. A valuable profession. I found it useful. Especially when removing criminals. Though Orion wisely left that part unsaid. As we prepared to leave, Lucien handed me a beautifully embossed invitation. Tomorrow evening. Our annual merchant masquerade. The most influential traders in the kingdom will attend. I looked at the invitation. Gold lettering. Elegant black mask printed across the front. Attendance by invitation only. Interesting. Very interesting. Lucien smiled. I believe you'll find it profitable. Outside, Pip immediately whispered. I don't trust him. Sable nodded. Neither do I. The Duke looked toward the guild building. He recognized us. I think so. How? I don't know. I studied the invitation again. He invited us anyway. Which means. I smiled slowly. He either wants to recruit us, or he wants to watch us. Pip gulped. Which is worse? Probably both. That evening, back at the inn, I examined the invitation beneath candlelight. Something caught my eye. Tiny raised markings hidden inside the gold border. Not decoration. Numbers. Very small numbers. Warehouse addresses. Dozens of them. I quickly compared them with the trade map we'd purchased earlier. Every address belonged to Silver Falcon Trading. This wasn't just an invitation. It was a map. A secret map. Hidden in plain sight. Someone attending the masquerade was expected to recognize it. I looked up at Orion. I think we just found the headquarters. Before he could answer, a sharp crack echoed downstairs. Then another. Glass shattered. Someone screamed. Sable was already moving before the sound had finished. Stay behind me. Heavy footsteps thundered up the inn staircase. Then a voice shouted from below. Find the black cat. My blood ran cold. They knew exactly who they were hunting. The scream echoed through the inn. Glass shattered downstairs. Heavy paws pounded across the wooden floor. Sable had already drawn both daggers. Upstairs. She shoved Pip toward the hallway. The Duke stepped directly in front of me. His calm silver eyes had become ice. Stay behind me. I'm not made of glass. I know. Then stop standing in front of me. I'm standing where I intend to. There wasn't time to argue. The front doors exploded inward. 6 masked cats stormed into the lobby. Not ordinary thieves. They moved together. Disciplined. Professional. Each wore dark traveling clothes with no family crest. No guild emblem. No identifying colors. One pointed upstairs. The black cat. Another shouted. Alive. Interesting. Not kill her. Alive. Someone wanted answers before they wanted bodies. That was useful. The innkeeper hurried from the kitchen, carrying nothing more threatening than a frying pan. What in the world? One masked attacker shoved him aside. He crashed harmlessly into a stack of chairs. Pip gasped. They're hurting civilians. No. I watched carefully. They're avoiding civilians. The attackers ignored every guest. Ignored the cash register. Ignored the expensive wine behind the bar. Every movement focused entirely on one objective. Me. Which meant, this wasn't robbery. It was an abduction. They are coming. Pip squeaked. The first attacker reached the top of the stairs. Before he could take another step, Orion moved. It happened so quickly my eyes barely followed. One moment he stood beside me. The next, the attacker was flying backward through the air. He landed across 3 dining tables. Wood splintered. The entire inn fell silent. Even the remaining attackers froze. Apparently, none of them expected a merchant to fight like the kingdom's greatest commander. The Duke calmly adjusted one sleeve. You have one opportunity. His voice was frighteningly quiet. Leave. Nobody moved. Then their leader laughed. So, there really is a wolf hiding among sheep. The masked cats attacked together. Bad decision. The hallway became chaos. Steel flashed. Furniture overturned. Sable intercepted 2 attackers with incredible speed. She didn't aim to kill. She aimed to disable. A precise strike to one wrist. A sweep of one leg. Both attackers collapsed before they understood what had happened. Pip grabbed a broom. I can help. He swung wildly. The broom snapped in half against a wall. I contributed emotionally. Meanwhile, I noticed something strange. One attacker wasn't fighting. He stood near the staircase, watching, observing. His eyes weren't following Orion. They were following me, the leader. Of course, leaders rarely did the fighting themselves. They watched, calculated, adjusted. I quietly stepped backward, exactly as if I were frightened. His eyes narrowed. He took the bait. The moment he lunged, I sidestepped, not because I was stronger, because I'd already noticed the loose rug beneath his feet. His boots caught. His balance disappeared. He stumbled forward, straight into the heavy grandfather clock standing beside the stairs. Crash! The enormous clock toppled onto him. The hallway shook. Pip blinked. Did you just defeat him with furniture? I merely introduced him to poor interior design. The remaining attackers hesitated, their leader trapped beneath several 100 pounds of carved oak. Sable immediately pinned him. Don't move. I wasn't planning to. You were. Fair. The fight ended almost as quickly as it had begun. 4 attackers escaped through broken windows. One lay unconscious. Their leader remained pinned beneath the ruined clock. The Duke walked toward him. Remove the mask. A young brown tabby. Scar above one eye. No recognizable crest. No tattoos. Nothing. Professional. Orion crouched. Who sent you? Silence. You've already failed. Still silence. The attacker smiled. I completed my assignment. I frowned. You didn't capture me. I wasn't supposed to. My stomach tightened. What? He looked directly at me. I only needed to confirm your face. The room suddenly became very quiet. No. He never intended to kidnap anyone. He came to identify us before anyone could react. The tabby bit down hard. A tiny glass capsule shattered between his teeth. No. I lunged forward. Too late. Foam appeared at the corner of his mouth. His breathing became shallow. Within seconds, he was gone. The Duke checked for a pulse. Nothing. Pip stayed in horror. He He killed himself. No. I looked at the broken glass glinting on the floor. He was carrying poison. Professionals don't trust capture. Sable quietly sheathed one dagger. They planned for failure. The innkeeper slowly approached, hands trembling. What do we do now? I looked around the destroyed lobby. Broken tables, shattered windows, scared guests. Then my eyes landed on something lying beside the attacker's body. A small bronze token, about the size of a coin. One side displayed the familiar silver falcon. The other, a tiny chess king. Not a crown, not a royal seal. A chess king. I picked it up. Orion looked over my shoulder. Have you seen that symbol before? No, but I know what it means. You do. I nodded slowly. This isn't a merchant's emblem. This is someone's signature. Back upstairs. I turned the token over in my paws again and again. One side represented the business, Silver Falcon Trading. The other represented the real organization. A chess king. Not a kingdom. Not royalty. A player. Someone who viewed the entire kingdom like a chessboard. Merchants. Stewards. Auditors. Even nobles. Pieces to be moved. Pip sat quietly beside the window. Do you think they know who we are now? I slipped the token into my satchel. They know exactly who we are. The Duke folded his arms. Then our advantage is gone. I smiled. No. Everyone looked at me. Our disguise is gone. I tapped the bronze token. But now, they've made the first mistake. Sable tilted 1A. What mistake? They came to us. I looked out across the lights of Brightport. They were afraid enough to act. And frightened opponents. Always leave clues. Outside, high above the harbor, the clock tower struck midnight. Neither of us noticed the elegant white cat, Guildmaster Lucian, watching from his office window. He held a matching bronze token between two claws. Then, with a calm smile, he dropped it into the fireplace. Interesting, he murmured. The Duchess survived. He turned to the shadow standing behind him. It seems. We'll have to invite her into the game personally. The following evening, Brightport glittered beneath thousands of lanterns. Soft pink lights floated across the harbor like tiny stars. Music drifted through the streets. Elegant carriages arrived one after another, each carrying merchants dressed in elaborate pastel gowns and tailored suits. Every guest wore a mask. Some resembled butterflies, others foxes, owls, ravens, dragons. The merchant masquerade wasn't just a celebration. It was where fortunes were made and destroyed. I stood before the mirror in our room at the inn. For tonight, I had chosen a gown unlike anything a duchess would normally wear. Layers of flowing midnight black silk shimmered with hints of sapphire whenever the light caught them. Tiny silver stars were embroidered along the hem. The sleeves faded into soft lavender lace. My long black fur had been carefully braided into an elegant crown around my ears, with delicate moonflower blossoms woven through it. Finally, I lifted my mask. It was shaped like a black swan. Simple, elegant, mysterious. Pipstead, you look incredible. I know. You weren't even modest for 1 second. I've seen the mirror. Sable rolled her eyes. I've officially decided confidence is one of her hobbies. Then Orion stepped into the room. Every conversation stopped. His charcoal suit fit perfectly. His silver mask covered only the upper half of his face, making his sharp eyes seem even brighter. He looked less like a merchant, and more like the mysterious hero in every romantic novel. I sighed dramatically. You're still making this difficult. He tilted his head. What am I doing now? Existing. Pip nodded solemnly. He's guilty. Orion looked genuinely confused. I've said nothing. Exactly, I replied. You somehow make silence look expensive. For the first time that evening, he laughed. A real laugh. Low, warm, unforced. Even Sable blinked. I've served him for 7 years. I've never heard that. Orion quickly cleared his throat. We should leave. The Merchant Guild Hall looked even more magnificent at night. Crystal chandeliers reflected thousands of tiny lights across polished marble floors. Pastel banners hung from the towering ceiling. An orchestra played gentle music from a raised balcony. Cats danced, negotiated, laughed. Every smile looked genuine, which meant at least half of them probably weren't. A servant welcomed each guest. Invitation, please. I presented Lucian's card. The servant examined it carefully, then immediately bowed deeper than before. Guildmaster Lucian has reserved a private table for your party. Interesting. Very interesting. Most first-time guests wouldn't receive special treatment. So why us? As we entered the ballroom, my ears twitched. Something felt wrong. Not dangerous. Calculated. I quietly counted. 1, 2, 3, 8 guards, disguised as servants. 2 musicians, actually watching the exits. 3 merchants carrying no ledgers, no contracts, no purchases, only observing. This wasn't a party. It was a surveillance operation. Lucian appeared almost instantly. His white suit tonight was embroidered with silver falcons across the cuffs. His golden mask resembled a lion. Elegant, confident, My dear friends. He smiled warmly. I'm delighted you accepted. We enjoy a good celebration. I'm certain you do. His amber eyes rested on me for just a fraction too long. I hope Brightport has welcomed you. It has. And you're in. Comfortable. I heard. He paused politely. You experienced some unfortunate trouble. There it was. Confirmation. He knew. I smiled sweetly. Nothing worth remembering. His eyes sparkled. I suspect we remember different things. Dinner was served. Each course more extravagant than the last. Honey-glazed vegetables. Fresh river trout. Herb-roasted pheasant. Berry soufflé. Expensive wines. I noticed something almost immediately. Nobody discussed food. Nobody discussed music. Every conversation revolved around trade. Shipping. Contracts. Warehouses. Investments. Money. Exactly the environment where secret deals could disappear into ordinary conversation. Halfway through the evening, Lucien stood. He gently tapped a crystal glass. The ballroom fell silent. My friends. Each year, we celebrate prosperity. Polite applause. But prosperity belongs only to those willing to recognize opportunity. More applause. So tonight, allow me to introduce a small entertainment. Servants rolled a velvet-covered display into the center of the ballroom. When the cloth was removed, gasps echoed through the hall. A crystal chessboard, every piece handcrafted from gemstones, rubies, emeralds, sapphires, diamonds. It was breathtaking. Lucien smiled. A friendly match. He looked directly at me. Lady Naira, would you honor us? The room became silent. Every eye turned toward me. Pip whispered. This feels like a trap. It is. Are we refusing? No. Why not? Because I want to know what game he's playing. Lucien gestured toward the opposite chair. One game. Winner receives a favor. A Saturday. And the loser. He smiled. Answers one honest question. Interesting. Not money. Information. The real prize tonight wasn't the jeweled chessboard. It was knowledge. The first moves were slow. Measured. He opened aggressively. Controlling the center. Testing me. I responded quietly. Developing pieces. Protecting weaknesses. Around us, the ballroom had become completely silent. Even the orchestra had stopped playing. Move after move. Neither of us spoke. Until Lucien finally smiled. You don't play like a merchant. I moved my bishop. No. You play like an accountant. I looked up. What makes you say that? You sacrifice nothing unnecessarily. Correct. You calculate. So do you. He nodded. True. Another move. Then another. Finally, I deliberately left one of my rooks exposed. Lucien captured it immediately. Exactly as I'd hoped. 5 moves later, his king had nowhere left to go. Check. He studied the board for nearly a full minute. Then, he laughed. A genuine laugh. Magnificent. He tipped over his king. I've lost. Polite applause filled the ballroom. Lucien looked at me with new respect. It seems I owe you a favor. You owe me an honest answer. Indeed. I leaned forward, keeping my voice low enough that only he could hear. What is Silver Falcon trading really transporting? His smile didn't disappear, but his eyes did. The warmth vanished completely. For the first time, I wasn't speaking to the charming guildmaster. I was speaking to whoever lived beneath the mask. He answered softly. They transport. He leaned even closer. Whatever keeps the kingdom standing. Then he stood, smiled brightly for the crowd, and announced, what a marvelous game. The ballroom erupted into applause. But as everyone celebrated, I noticed something hidden beneath the chessboard. A tiny folded note. No one else seemed to see it. While the applause continued, I slipped it into my sleeve without anyone noticing. Whatever was written inside, someone had risked everything to get it into my paws. The applause still echoed through the Merchant Guild Hall. Elegant cats congratulated Lucien on a wonderful match. Servants refilled crystal glasses. Musicians resumed their soft melody. To everyone else, the evening continued as though nothing unusual had happened. Only I knew better. The tiny folded note hidden inside my sleeve suddenly felt heavier than gold. Lucien approached one last time. His smile had returned. Warm. Effortless. Completely unreadable. I hope you'll attend again next year. I'll consider it. Our city enjoys intelligent guests. So I've noticed. His amber eyes lingered on me. You ask dangerous questions. I prefer useful ones. And have you found useful answers? I smiled politely. Not yet. Good. He inclined his head. I do hope you continue searching. Then he disappeared into the crowd. We didn't open the note immediately. Not in the ballroom. Not in the carriage. Not even after returning to the inn. The Duke closed every shutter. Sable inspected the hallway twice. Pip checked beneath the beds, inside the wardrobe, and even behind the curtains. I think we're alone. You think? I asked. I checked everywhere. You didn't check the chimney. Pip stared at the fireplace. Please don't make me check the chimney. Sable almost smiled. I'll check it. 5 minutes later, she returned. No one. Good. Only then did I carefully unfold the tiny piece of paper. The handwriting was hurried, almost desperate. It contained only 4 lines. The guild isn't the head. Follow the blue ledgers. Warehouse 21. Come alone. Midnight. Silence. Pip spoke first. Absolutely not. I wasn't asking. You aren't going alone. I probably am. No. The answer came from Orion. Firm. Immediate. No. I folded the note again. If whoever wrote this wanted privacy, they also wanted to separate you from your guards. Exactly. So it's obviously a trap. Probably. The Duke folded his arms. Then the discussion is over. I smiled. It rarely is. Sable stepped closer to the table. My lady. I've walked into traps before. So have I. They usually involve knives. I looked at the note. This one involves information. Pip shook his head rapidly. I vote no. You don't have a vote. I'd like one. I'll consider your application. The Duke remained silent for a long moment. Then, we compromise. Everyone looked at him. You'll go. Pip gasped. My lord. But, he continued, you won't actually be alone. I tilted 1A. I'm listening. An hour later, Brightport's clock tower struck midnight. The harbor shimmered beneath pale moonlight. Fog drifted lazily across the docks. Warehouse 21 stood at the very edge of the commercial district. Old. Quiet. Almost forgotten. I approached alone. At least, that's what anyone watching would believe. Hidden across neighboring rooftops, Sable waited with 2 trusted guards. Pip remained 2 streets away with the carriage. And some way invisible in the darkness, the Duke watched. The warehouse door creaked open before I touched it. Interesting. Someone had been waiting. Inside, only a single lantern burned. Its soft light revealed towering stacks of shipping crates. The air smelled of cedar, salt water, fresh ink. Hello. My voice echoed through the empty building. No answer. I took another step, then another. The silence felt wrong, not abandoned, occupied, watching. A quiet voice drifted through the darkness. You actually came. I turned. A small cream-colored Siamese cat stepped into the lantern light. She couldn't have been older than 19. Her clothes were simple. A dock worker's uniform. One sleeve was torn. A fresh bruise darkened one cheek. She looked exhausted. Terrified. She immediately bowed. My lady. I don't have much time. You wrote the note? Yes. You work here? I used to. Her ears flattened. They're looking for me now. I studied her carefully. No hidden weapons. No nervous glances toward the exits. Just fear. Real fear. My name is Elia. She swallowed hard. I kept the shipping records. The blue ledgers. She nodded quickly. They are different. How? Official ledgers are black. The secret books are blue. My heart skipped. 2 accounting systems. One for the government. One for the conspiracy. Classic fraud. Where are they? Elia looked over both shoulders. Then whispered. Not here. Where? They're moved every full moon. When's the next transfer? She hesitated. Tomorrow. I froze. Tomorrow. The Royal Commission would also arrive tomorrow. No coincidence. Everything was happening at once. Elia reached inside her satchel. She pulled out a single folded page. I copied one entry before I escaped. I unfolded it. My eyes widened. It wasn't a shipment record. It was a payment register. Names. Amounts. Dates. Dozens of payments. Each marked with symbols instead of titles. A crown. A falcon. A sword. A scale. No names. Just symbols. Until the final entry. There. Written in elegant handwriting. Was one name. Maribel. I stared at the page. Lady Maribel. The elegant cream Persian cat who had visited the manor. The Duke's longtime family friend. No. Something wasn't right. The amount beside her name wasn't a payment received. It was a payment sent. I looked up sharply. She paid them. Elia shook her head. No. Then what does this mean? Before she could answer, a loud whistle pierced the night. Elia's face turned white. They found me. Heavy footsteps thundered outside the warehouse. Lanterns flashed through the windows. Voices shouted from every direction. There! Inside. Don't let them escape. Elia grabbed my wrist. My lady. If they catch me, don't believe anything they say about Lady Maribel. Before I could ask another question, the warehouse doors exploded inward. Masked figures flooded inside. At their head, a familiar voice echoed through the darkness. Seal every exit. I knew that voice. Guildmaster Lucian. He stepped into the lantern light without wearing a mask. For the first time, there was no charming smile. Only cold determination. His amber eyes met mine. Then he spoke quietly. You should have stayed out of this. The warehouse doors burst open. Cold night air rushed inside. Lantern light spilled across the wooden floor as masked guards poured into the building. Lucian walked between them without hurry. No smile. No warmth. No pretense. The charming guildmaster was gone. Only the strategist remained. His amber eyes settled on Elia. There you are. The young Siamese cat instinctively stepped behind me. Her entire body trembled. You've caused quite a bit of inconvenience. Lucian's voice remained calm. I only copied one page. I know. He sighed almost regretfully. You always were an honest accountant. I quietly folded the copied ledger page and slipped it into my sleeve. Lucian noticed. Of course he did. Lady Nyra. I assume you've read it. Enough. And I have questions. I imagined you would. He smiled faintly. Unfortunately, this isn't the place for answers. He raised one paw. 2 masked guards advanced. I'll be taking Miss Elia. Elia grabbed my arm. No. Please. They'll kill me. I took one step forward. No. Lucian tilted his head. No. You aren't taking her. He actually looked amused. You believe you can stop me? I believe you underestimate accountants. Several guards exchanged confused looks. One whispered. What does that mean? I don't know. Lucian sighed. I truly hoped we could remain civilized. So did I. It's unfortunate. I agree. Then, he snapped his fingers. The guards rushed forward. Before they reached us, a crossbow bolt struck the floor between them. Thunk. Every head turned upward. Sable stood on the warehouse rafters. Calm. Balanced. Another bolt already loaded. I'd advise against another step. The guards immediately scattered for cover. Lucian closed his eyes briefly. I expected as much. Then, the warehouse windows exploded inward. Glass rained across the floor. Black-cloaked guards entered from 3 directions. Not Lucian's guards. The Duke's. At their front, Orion strode into the lantern light. Sword already drawn. His silver eyes never left Lucian. I warned you. The warehouse fell silent. Lucian slowly smiled again. So, the Duke abandons his disguise. I was never hiding. No. Lucian nodded thoughtfully. You rarely do. The 2 leaders faced one another across the warehouse. Neither moved. Neither blinked. Around them, everyone waited. Lucian finally spoke. I wondered when we'd meet. You've been stealing from my people. I've been preserving the kingdom. By murdering witnesses. Necessary sacrifices. The Duke's grip tightened around his sword. I've heard enough. Lucian laughed softly. You still believe this is about money? It isn't. No. He spread his paws. Money is simply the language. The real business is power. While everyone focused on the confrontation, I quietly tugged Elia toward the back of the warehouse. She noticed immediately. What are you doing? Leaving. They'll see us. They're watching the Duke. Sure enough, every guard's eyes remained fixed on Orion. Nobody was watching the accountants. Classic mistake. We slipped behind towering stacks of shipping crates. The further we moved, the stranger the warehouse became. Rows of ordinary cargo suddenly ended. Beyond them, a narrow hallway, hidden behind hanging canvas. Interesting. Very interesting. Elia stopped. I never knew this was here. Neither did they. I pointed toward faint footprints in the dust. Someone uses it regularly. The hallway opened into a tiny records room. Shelves lined every wall. Hundreds. No. Thousands of ledgers. Not black. Blue. Every single one. My breath caught. We found them. Elia gasped. The blue ledgers. I carefully removed the nearest book. Every page contained 2 columns. Official shipment. Actual shipment. Official payroll. Actual payroll. Official taxes. Actual taxes. It was an accountant's nightmare. And an auditor's dream. I flipped through another volume. Then another. Then another. Each recorded years of fraud. Bribes. Diversions. Secret payments. Nothing had been hidden. Everything had been documented. Because whoever ran the conspiracy never expected anyone outside the organization to read these books. Then, one ledger fell open by itself. Near the middle, a folded parchment slipped onto the floor. I picked it up. Unlike the others, this wasn't financial. It was organizational. A chart. Boxes connected by lines. At the very bottom, warehouse supervisors. Above them, guild officers. Above them, regional directors. Above them, only one empty box. No name. Just a symbol. A black chess king. The same symbol from the bronze token. Elia pointed with a trembling paw. I've seen that before. Where? Only once. When? The annual founders' banquet. Who wore it? I never saw the face. Everyone bowed. Even Lucian. That stopped me. Lucian, the guildmaster, bowed. So he wasn't the mastermind. He answered to someone else. Suddenly, a bell rang. Not from the ballroom. Not from the city. From inside the warehouse. Elia's ears flattened. They know. How? The ledgers. She looked at the empty space where one book had been removed. They count them every night. Wonderful. Of course they did. The hidden door slammed shut behind us. Heavy locks clicked into place. Someone spoke through the thick wooden panels. I was hoping you'd find this room. The voice was calm, confident, unfamiliar. Not Lucian. Not Rowan. Someone else. I slowly turned toward the only remaining exit. Iron bars began sliding down over the doorway, one after another. Clang, clang, clang. We were trapped. Then the mysterious voice chuckled. Congratulations, Duchess. You finally reached the truth. A pause, but accountants often make one fatal mistake. They assume. Every ledger tells the whole story. The lanterns inside the records room suddenly extinguished all at once. Darkness swallowed the shelves. Somewhere beyond the bars, footsteps began approaching. Slowly, patiently, confidently, and for the first time since arriving in this kingdom, I couldn't tell whether we had uncovered the conspiracy or walked directly into its heart.